The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, this is Greg Byrne. Welcome to our October 19th RAD Application Live Q&A. I'm here with Will Levy and Kathleen Foster from our collective RAD team. And today we're going to spend just a couple seconds going over the application periods, some updates from the RAD resource, our sort of normal tip of the week, and then we'll jump right into questions. So again, the focus of this is really trying to help PHAs get their questions answered about submitting the application, and if we have larger policy issues, we have time, we'll be happy to entertain those. For the remembering sort of how you ask questions and raise the hand by call the dial-in number shown on your attendee control panel and input the audio pin shown, which is unique to each attendee. I think this has worked pretty well for the last couple sessions, so I think it's even better to do to talk as opposed to doing it through emails, but you can also email, whichever sort of you're more comfortable with. I'll review for a second the application periods. So just to remind people that the initial period ends next Wednesday. And it ends Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. The applications will then be reviewed and scored and awarded based on their score. Regardless of the score, all applications will be ranked during this initial period higher than any application received during the ongoing period. And then the ongoing period begins on Thursday, the 25th, and those applications will be reviewed on a first-come, first-served basis with no ranking factors. And a lot will depend just simply on how many applications we get during the initial period and whether we have enough to make awards to the 60,000 units that the Congress gave us under the initial authorization, or whether if we don't, then the ongoing application period, you'll just be first come, first serve. Okay, so with that, Will, I'm going to turn over to the RAD resource update.
Sure. So just a reminder, as you're finishing your applications, we've got all our frequently asked questions and even the less frequently asked questions available through the RAD website. And you can get to radresource.net, where you can search all of the questions and answers we provided. Some just the sampling of questions answered this week on 4% tax credits, how to enter your operating expenses if you're doing a partial conversion, how we've treated utility allowances, vacancy rates, about the mixed finance cap, about how to handle your application and the ongoing conversion if you've got capital financing bonds, and some questions on scattered sites. So and that's just a sampling. So just keep your questions coming. I think we respond to them pretty quickly. So and search this database if you've got something that you think has been asked before. It's a great way to get a ton of information. Again, we announced this last week. This is brand fresh new last week, but we've posted the RAD Physical Conditions Assessment, which, again, you don't need to fill out or you don't need to complete with your application, but if selected, it's going to be due 90 days after you've been selected. So just a note, take a look at it, start to get comfortable with possibly procuring services.
And Will, just on that for a moment, the PCA, that in many instances where the PHA is going out and getting financing from a lender, it's actually the lender that will probably procure the PCA, not the PHA. So PHAs are used to procuring their physical needs assessments today. Likely that the lender will initiate that process. Now, if you're not going out and seeking third-party financing and you're just converting and building a replacement reserve component or something, then you'd procure it yourself. But otherwise, you'd be working with your lender.
Okay. So in addition to that, we put out a Mortgage E-Letter 2012-20, which is really targeted at the FHA lenders, many of whom will be involved in your deals, and it's guidance to them on how on HUD's underwriting standards in RAD transactions. So now we'll move on to the tip of the week. And since this is our last week before applications are due, we've actually got a few tips. It's a special week. We're very excited. First, we just want to talk to you about the green building and energy efficiency ranking factor. We've gotten a number of questions on this, and there's been some important clarifications to make. So if you're pursuing the 10 points for the green building and energy efficiency ranking factor, you have to indicate that in the application, and you have to tell us which green designation you think you're going for. In the notice, we've provided examples of sort of pre-approved designations. If you've got one in mind that's not listed in the notice, we strongly encourage you to send us a note and say, hey, there's a regional standard that I'm planning to pursue, but it wasn't in the notice. Will HUD accept this? That's all you've got to say. We've got people who are ready to assess whether that standard's acceptable, and it just makes sense to ask us before the application comes in rather than after. But on that same point, though, which ranking factor which green designation you end up pursuing, it's possible that it changes, especially after you get your completed physical conditions assessment back. And so some folks have asked, well, what if I want to change that designation down the line in a few months after I get my PCA? Would it be okay if I switch, say, from the enterprise standard to the Earth class standard? And we've said that's fine. Just another note that it's not to earn this green building ranking factor. It's not sufficient to just do the mandatory energy upgrades, such as replacing all items with Energy Star appliances. You have to commit to achieving one of these designations to get it. The next tip of the week, resident comments. So another question we've gotten all the time is, what does HUD want to see attached with the application with respect to resident comments? It's one of the attachments that we did not provide a template form for, so there's some ambiguity. But the answer is we want to, the attachment has to include what the resident comments were and what the owner or PHA's responses were, either from the 2 meetings or afterwards if residents sent you additional comments. So that's all you need to provide, what the comments were, and then how you're addressing those comments or what your responses to those comments were. Okay, the last tip of the week.
Well, this one's a trick question, right?
A little bit. Last week we told you we had a slide on fatal errors. This week another slide on fatal errors, but this one's a little more straightforward. Just a reminder that fatal errors are in fact fatal. An application will be rejected upon submission if it contains fatal errors. It's neatly built into the application or at the bottom. After it tells you the required attachments, it will have in bold red font a note if your application contains fatal errors. And so on the screen you can see, in this case, or I don't know if you can see this well enough, but there's a bold red line, and it says this contains 9 fatal errors. That's 9 fatal errors too many for HUD standards. So do not submit an application with fatal errors. If you, just to repeat our advice last week, if you think you're getting a fatal error in error and it's not supposed to be, you can't figure out why it is a fatal error, let us know. Send us a note to rad@hud.gov and we'll help you resolve it.
Great. Thanks, Will. So we're going to move into the live Q&A session. We expect that there's a number of people on the call that are got probably little butterflies because Wednesday next week is the deadline, and they may have some remaining questions they want to review with us. So we're going to open the line and see what questions people have and see if we can help you out. So whoever has one, start. Cora. Hey, Cora, in New Albany, Indiana. How are you doing, Cora?
I am doing really well, thank you.
Great. All right, what do you have for questions?
If we're doing all new construction, what do we do about the PCA? we're looking to demolish and build back, and so what do I do about the PCA if I'm a little confused.
You won't be required to prepare a PCA when you do a new construction.
Okay, so just wanted to make sure.
Right, and it obviously doesn't affect the application process, but once you get awarded, then it's a moot point if you're doing new construction.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Cora. Let's see, we're just going to look to see who else has got their hands raised. Ron Law.
Welcome back to the show, Ron.
Yeah, welcome back, Ron.
Thanks. Yeah, I got a couple of questions. First one is, if you're converting 100% of your units to PBRA, or for that matter, PBV, and it's a tax credit project, but because of the different income limits, you wind up having some tenants who are over income for a tax credit unit, but have to be accepted at the project because of no rescreening or because they're grandfathered in at 80% or something like that.
Right, what do you do then?
Yeah.
Right. So you have to comply with the no rescreening and no kicking out of existing families. So that trumps everything. And if it turns out that your tax credit program, because those families are over income, that you could run into a number of sort of possibilities. One, not apply tax credits for that particular unit, and we know that's not desirable for what you'd like to do or preferable in terms of financing, but you may be forced to do that. You may also want to voluntarily see if a family is willing to move to another unit or get a voucher from your agency that you can't forcibly move the family, but they may be interested in some other accommodations that you have, and that would be fine as long as you documented it.
Okay, can you offer inducements?
Such as offering them a voucher?
Offering them a voucher, offering them some kind of
ticket to the World Series
payment.
Right. Ron, I think because we don't have general counsel sitting with us at this session,
okay.
Let's check on that. I think it's actually been done in other places. Whether it was appropriate or not, I'm not sure. But we'll follow up with the FAQ, and we'll try to get it posted by Monday.
Okay. Another question. It's at least theoretically possible that in a situation where you've had a de minimis reduction of units approved, that you wind up not having sufficient units available to accommodate everybody who wants to come back. What happens then?
Have to accommodate them. If those, it's sort of the onus is on you. If you have a 100-unit property and whatever reason, let's say some of those units are efficiencies, and you want to drop it down to 90 units, but it's 95% occupied today. There's 5 families you've got to deal with. So it might be that through normal attrition, people move out, during the course of a year. If you have normal attrition and people are moving out, that would be fine, sort of prior to conversion. But otherwise, you would be bound by then keeping the number of units in order to satisfy the fact that everyone has a right to return. Or again, like the first condition, where you have an overhoused family, or excuse me, an over-income family, that there may be an incentive, or there may be other housing that the family voluntarily may choose to take, but you can't require them to move.
Okay.
Okay. Those are the two, Ron?
Let me see here.
Hey, well,
okay, suppose you've got it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Okay. Suppose that again, a situation where you've got a tenant who is not income eligible for a housing choice voucher. Does he still have the same choice mobility options that that a person who's eligible for an HCV would have?
Right. If they're over income, wouldn't be eligible for the choice voucher program. No, they wouldn't be able to get a choice voucher.
Okay, so basically their choice mobility does not apply to them. Is that a fair?
Right. We're going to hold that. I want to go back and affirm with our legal team on that. So we'll include it in FAQ on Monday.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Ron. Anfro Gamazo?
Yes, good afternoon. I have a question last week about under RAD about the security deposit amount. Right. Did you were able to find the answer for?
Yeah, Anfro, I'm sorry we've not firmed that up. So okay. We'll keep that on the ongoing list of ones that we need to resolve. Okay,
and then I just have one more. If under RAD there is any requirements for, like under ARA, there was a Buy American requirement. Does RAD have any requirement like that?
No, nothing like that for RAD, for Buy American, no.
Okay. Yeah.
No.
And I'm sorry. And the reporting as well, nothing similar like that, an electronic quarterly reporting on the RAD?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. John May, John? Oh, I'm sorry. Who? Lisa Von Hale?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I just have a very quick question. I'm really new. I'm kind of getting in this game late. But anyway, I'm representing 2 small housing authorities here in Kentucky. And I guess my question is it a problem to submit the application without tax credits if you know that eventually you might?
So it depends on what you might, right? So if you present that you have a physical condition of a property that has $25,000 worth of rehab per unit, say, and your application says that my first mortgage proceeds can only generate $10,000 per unit, then you haven't sort of met the basic feasibility test, and the application will produce a fatal error.
Okay.
If instead what you're saying is, I need that 25, I think I can get there with 4% credits, I prepare the pro forma, it looks like it pencils out, but I'm still going to I may still try to shoot for 9% because I may want to do even more than that level of rehab. That's fine. But whatever you present in your application, that scheme or plan has to make sense. So
right. I guess I'm kind of down to the end here, and I'm just not positive I can get an investor letter at this point. I mean, close, and yeah. we've done many successful tax credit rehabs, but that will be rejected if I don't have that. Correct?
Right. You don't have that. No, it's right. So one, you might be able to get it by next Wednesday evening, and if that's the case, terrific. If you're not, then stay in touch, because see what happens and whether there's still reservation authority left after Wednesday.
Okay. All right. That's what I needed to know.
Thanks, Lisa. So, Welton Jordan. Hey, Welton, you're back again.
Yes, I am. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Hey, let's have a couple of questions just for clarification. I think I asked a question about managers' units and kind of how to show those. My kind of, I guess, suggestion to our team was that we put them in as market rate units, since they won't be receiving subsidy, because we'll really need a HAP for, let's just say if it's 200 units and we have 2 managers' units, the HAP would be for the 200.
Yep.
So we're putting them in under market rate with also the knowledge that they're not going to really be generating any income. Would that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
So okay. On the application, so let me just make sure I understand it. You have 200 units under PIC right now. 2 of the units are going to be manager units?
Yes.
So you'll have 198 dwelling units?
Correct.
Okay, so in the application, what you want to do is just put 198 units converting under that units converting line, and don't put any units under other affordable or market rate.
Okay.
And then it should work out fine.
Okay, so we don't have to really we don't have to account for those two.
Nope. Right. They're not being converted under the de minimis provision.
Right. And they wouldn't be under the contract post conversion. So.
Okay. Okay. I think that makes sense. We just wanted to make sure that, but they will be, rehabbed, but we have to put it in here.
Right.
Okay. And the other one was, I think, something that we have floated around through one of our consultants was the 29 and 2010 FDS information that's pulling in from the app and not matching what we submitted. And it's not really a material issue to our application, but just wanted to, I guess, check with you all to see how we should we just go with what you have in there, or should we try to correct it? I guess what's the guidance on that?
Sure, you've got two options there. It was a minor bug that we found in the original application we posted, which we fixed in the revised version on October 4th. So if it's immaterial, if it doesn't affect the application, you can just continue with the version you're using, or you can download the new version, which should have that corrected.
Okay.
But then you'd have to fill out the application again. So either way is fine with us.
Okay. Okay. Just want to make sure that wasn't gonna kind of make any real stink. If we do get selected and we move down the road.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Walt.
All right. Thank you.
Ron Long. Hey, Ron, back again. Ron, did you want to ask another follow-up question?
Yeah. I've got we have a situation where we might have to do relocation in phases for a rehab because of the availability of suitable relocation housing.
Okay.
So we could have a situation where we've got tenants living in unrehabbed units and some tenants relocated and other tenants living in units where the rehab has been finished. Do all of the units convert at the time we close on the construction loan and start the relocation?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question, does the provisions about no rescreening, does that apply to like rescreening for criminal background?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So if they're in there now, then they're permitted to remain. But if you had some eviction action started on someone, you'd have to follow through with the eviction action. You can't just summarily evict the family because of conversion. Or if after conversion something happens that would otherwise cause their lease to be breached or something, then you could take action. But yeah.
But okay. The existence of criminal background, which would justify denying admission, that would not under RAD.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Great. Sure. Sasha Gay Angus.
Hi.
Hey.
We are pursuing a mixed finance development where we would be converting 22 of the units that are already in PIC into a mixed finance project, along with some other traditional tax credit units. So the question is, with respect to Section 3, the de minimis reduction, the number of units that are in PIC are correct. But
which is roughly how many right now?
Which is roughly 251.
Okay.
So we're only calling for 22 RAD units under PBV.
Okay.
how, if you could walk me through Section 3 again, the de minimis reduction, and how that needs to be completed, that would be helpful relative to kind of the structure that I'm talking about.
Great. So we're going to pull up the form and just walk, as you said, walk you through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So in Section 3,
yes.
You said you have 250 units at the development right now, right? In the PIC.
Yes.
Okay. So in Section 2, the first thing you'll do is for units converting, you'll just put in the 22 units.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then in Section 3, when you go down to Section 3, you'll get all sorts of flags saying, whoa, 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 explain what's going on with the rest of the units.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're doing is what we're calling a partial conversion. You're converting a
right.
camp, but leaving the remainder as public housing. So you'll put the balance of the units in row 69 as partial.
That's what I did. Great.
Okay, good luck.
I just wanted to be sure. I have another question.
Sure.
Okay. Should I be including the contract rents in the RAD inventory assessment tool, or should I be incorporating the fair market rents in the actual application? The contract rents and the fair market rents are slightly different, and I just want to make sure that I'm using the right rents. Obviously, I'd love to be able to use the higher of the two.
So your application is auto-populating the contract rents, basically the same contract rents you found in the inventory assessment tool. And under RAD, since we're limited to current funding, you won't necessarily be able to get up to the fair market rent if that rent is in fact higher.
So the short answer is I should be using the contract rents.
Right. And there's really nothing you need to do in the application in terms of filling that out.
I thought that the reasonable rents should be incorporated on line 57 under section.
So the reasonable rent, so if you're converting, the reasonable rent really only matters if you're converting to project-based vouchers. Because, is that what you're doing?
Yes.
So the reasonable rent is basically it's the market rent, the comparable market rent. And this line only impacts the rent cap in the project-based voucher program. So so just looking at the example on the screen now, one-bedroom apartment in this example is $580, meaning that's what it should go for in this community. But if the contract rent at this project were $600, then that unit couldn't get a rent higher than $580 because the project-based voucher program, you can never exceed the reasonable rent.
Oh, I see. And that's the only purpose of incorporating the reasonable rent.
Yeah. That's the only impact it has in the application.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Sure. We've got Nancy McElhaney. Nancy, a return caller. How are you?
Doing great.
Hey, good. What can we do for you?
This is actually Jen speaking, part of Nancy and I work together, and Jen, Will, I just wanted to say thank you very much for helping so quickly the other day at night after hours. I really appreciate all the work that you guys have been doing. I do have a couple questions though. The first one is pretty administrative. We just haven't gotten an answer on a small question that we had. I just want to make sure it's not going to cause a glitch. Our current president CEO, his name is not being.
It's in the Q&A.
Oh,
we got that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. My main question was, will the email be? What did they say? Sorry, you don't need to ask.
We're fine.
Okay, really sounds right there. Sorry, I missed that. My second question is. Pardon?
No problem. You're good.
Thanks. We're working on a bunch of stuff. My second question is regarding, it's essentially regarding the 30-day milestone where the development team requirements are required to be submitted to you, including resumes, et cetera.
Okay.
We're just slightly concerned about that deadline because we are going to be going through our procurement for our co-developer after application submission. And because the awards could be made as soon as the day after the 30-day review period, which would be November 24th, that 30-day deadline could be December 24th, and obviously there's 2 big holidays built in there. Do you have an idea of when you think you might actually be issuing the CHAP, first of all? And if it is that soon, will there ever be any extensions, or is the RAD notice correct in that you will revoke the CHAP?
So I guess we'll start that most likely the CHAPs will end up going out early December. It's sort of our latest thinking, and so yeah, 30 days after that would put you sometime into early January, so you'd hopefully miss the major holidays. And then the second question was around what if you're still in the procurement process at that 30-day mark? Is that right?
Most important, I think we'll be out of the procurement process. My worry is contract negotiation, if that extends further, which is often out of our control. Sure.
Yeah, so we'd work with you there. Really the most important thing in that milestone and some of the early milestones is we want to make sure that you're making progress towards getting to the financing plan. And so if you're almost there, if you're just in contract negotiation, you know, we'd work with you.
Okay, then great. We definitely would at least be almost there. Thank you.
All right, good. Lisa Von Hale. Lisa, go ahead.
I apologize if you've answered this question, but I want to go back to the fair market rents. In the application that I'm working on, the rents that it's forcing me to use is 93% of fair market rent. And can you tell me one more time, I mean, why can I not use fair market rent?
Right. So the RAD program that we got, we asked the Congress for money for this year, and the Congress gave us half a loaf, and that was they let us run the program but without any extra money. And so what it means is we're limited by what the funding you currently get in the public housing program, rents, capital fund, operating fund. And so that's where you have to, we know that it doesn't work for every public housing project around the country, but you have to say whatever those 3 buckets add up to, and which in your case you said is about 93% of the FMR.
Right, that's what it calculates out to.
Right. Can I do something with this property to preserve it over 20 years, either with that funding or with some other contributions of capital funds or operating reserves or getting 4% credits, whatever it is, can I make the number work? And yeah, so just we don't have any ability to change that number.
Okay. But, I mean, is that, and that's the definite number? I mean, that is all the rents I would get after you all look at this? That's it, right?
That's
There's no...
Right.
There's no negotiation?
No, unfortunately not. I mean, again, if you find ways to increase the revenue by having antennas on the building or laundry receipts, I mean, all that stuff is fine. But in terms of what we will give you for the basic contract rent, there's all we have. Okay.
All right. That wasn't the answer I want. Can I ask 2 more short questions?
Sure, but don't be discouraged. You'll solve it.
Yeah. What really needs to happen at this property, or both of the properties that I will be submitting, is both properties pay all the utilities now. And what I really think is the more prudent thing is for the residents to pay the utilities and for us to establish a utility allowance.
Right.
Do I have to I mean, I don't know that I have the time between now and Wednesday to figure that out.
Yeah, at least you don't have to worry about that. I mean, if you eventually decide to change the utility configuration of the property, there'd be an adjustment. The residents would get a higher utility allowance, and your contract rent would be adjusted accordingly because you wouldn't be paying utilities anymore.
Right, but we can do that after the fact.
Oh yeah, you don't have to worry about that now. Yeah, just prepare the pro forma without that.
Okay, well, and because I felt like it was almost necessary to leave it the way it is so that operating expenses are comparable.
Yeah.
So that was a decision I had made. I just wanted to confirm that. So.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks.
Amparo Camazo. Within 2 meetings.
Hi, this is Amparo.
Hey, go ahead, Amparo.
Just a quick question. Since RAD is a demonstration project or program, Do we have the option to use the HQS or the UPCS?
So if you convert, depends on where you convert to. If you convert to project-based vouchers, you're governed by the project-based voucher rules, which is HQS. If you convert to multifamily Section 8, or what we call PBRA, project-based rental assistance, then that program, like public housing, is covered under the Uniform Physical Condition Standards, or UPCS, and there will be a UPCS inspection either once every year or every 3 years, depending on your score you receive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome. Gussie Lord, Gussie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm wondering as far as evidence of the PHA to administer PBV contracts as a required attachment, what exactly are you looking for?
All right, if this is one we should have been clearer in the application, that if it's your own agency that's doing the administering the voucher program, you don't need to give us anything. It's only if you don't have a voucher program and you're needing to find someone else to run it for you.
Okay, so just the answer in section, sorry, whatever section that is, the earlier section is sufficient. We don't need to attach anything.
Right. Right. Just put your own PHA in. Your own PHA.
All right, thank you.
Sure, Gussie. Okay, we're just looking to see if we got any other callers right now. So far, the board is quiet. We'll just give it another minute or so, see if we get any more response. There we go. John May. John, go ahead.
Hi. Actually, I have a couple of questions, but actually I have one following up on that last question there. If you're already a voucher agency, does that mean you're ineligible for the 10 choice mobility points that you would get from getting another agency?
That's correct. You only get the choice points if you are contributing to some agency that's converting to PBRA and they have no vouchers. But if you're an agency that has its own vouchers and you're required to do choice, there's no points associated with that.
Okay, so if you're an agency, if you're a voucher agency, the only way you get the points is to contribute them to another agency.
That's right. That's right.
Because obviously you wouldn't need another agency's vouchers if you're a voucher agency.
Right.
Okay. All right. On the application is requiring that you enter rent reasonableness rents, or else it generates a fatal error.
Yep.
If you're converting to PBRA, rent reasonableness doesn't come into play. So A, I'm kind of wondering why that's required, but B, I mean, these are the ones that I'm working on have all been public housing developments, so they've never had market studies or rent reasonableness.
So, yeah, I don't know who the dummy was that did the applications, but yeah, there was an error in that application. So if it is a PBRA, the reasonable rent is not necessary, but you're still going to get a fatal error. So so put in a number.
No fatal errors, right?
Right, no fatal errors, right? But even though public housing doesn't have a rent reasonable provision in the way that PBV does, you do have flat rents in public housing today. And everyone's supposed to have a flat rent, so there's no reason for you not to put that in. Again, it's not going to make a difference, but you can just go ahead and put your flat rent in.
Okay, you can just enter, okay, that's what I want to know, what number, because I had no idea what number to put there.
Yep.
So if we just enter the flat rents, that'll be okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, great.
In fact, that's fine for anybody who's even converting to PBV. I mean, if this is an estimate of under the PBV program, it's called the reasonable rent. In PBRA, it would be done through a rent comparability study, or it's whatever the market rent. What it really means is what's the market rent. And theoretically, PHAs who have flat rent schedules are supposed to be the market rent. So even if you're converting to PBV, you don't have to go out and do a study right now. You should be informed by the flat rent that's already there. So, okay, go ahead, John. You have another question?
Okay, well, another one. This relates to MTW agencies. In the notice, the MTW, the current sort of subsidy for the MTW is supposed to be a pro rata. The operating subsidy portion is supposed to be a pro rata portion of the of the total operating subsidy to the development.
Right. That's just to clarify for those MTW moving to work agencies, and there are 10 or so what we call alternative subsidy MTW agencies where their original subsidy formulas were converted into a per unit amount, and they're no longer used the standard HUD 52723 operating subsidy sort of form as the rest fill out. So it's just in those cases. But keep going now, John.
Okay. So, I mean, that part I was fairly clear on, but then I was a little confused about how you're going to determine what the current rent is, because there's some language in the footnote there about HUD will determine it based on the current 50058s, and I'm not clear sort of what that number is going to be. I mean, are you going to like pick some month and then look at all the 50058s and say, okay, that's the current rent, or is it going to be some historic, some month in the past, or I'm a little unclear.
It's a good question. I think we need to we can clarify that. And if you send it in a question, we can do that offline.
Okay. I mean, I'm actually working with a MTW agency that has the alternate, operating thing. So, when we're filling out the applications, I mean, we were there are numbers that are on the that are on one of the tabs in the application. I was simply sticking that number in there, but I'm not clear that that's actually reflects the number that would actually be used. When all is said and done, if you're doing it according to the footnote in the in the notice. So, so I mean, if we're doing an application and we're getting it in by Wednesday, and we use that number and it turns out to be a different number, is that going to mess things up? Is that going to revoke our is that going to revoke our CHAP, or?
Yeah, no, you can definitely use that number for now.
Yeah. I'm kind of on a related thing. I was looking at the number that you had for the subsidy on that same tab, and it actually comes out quite a bit different from the number that you get by taking the subsidy and dividing it up at a per unit amount. So I'm not clear if that's going to. It doesn't seem to generate. Since you don't really enter the number in there, we're going to end up with something different using the numbers that using the number that they have from their documentation versus the number that's actually in the application.
So, John, if you want, either later this afternoon or first thing Monday morning, we're happy to get back on the phone with you, pull up the application, and pull up your our database. So.
Yeah, that would be good, because I mean, it's sort of the application just kind of generates the contract rent itself, but it comes up with a different number than we come up with.
How about 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time today?
Yeah, sure.
No, my teammate Will here. Now it turns out it doesn't work for him.
How about 4:30?
Sure, that'll be fine, Will. I think I have your number already.
Perfect.
Right, yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, right.
So great.
We've spoken, and you've spoken with Jeff too. So.
Yeah, right. So yeah, give us a call, John. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Rochelle Tucker. Go ahead, Rochelle.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The first one is just grammatical. When you go in to fill in on the application for what is that? When you talk about for the board page, for the board approval form, it's not populating in the relocation. It's not populating in there. So when I filled it in on the application form.
So Rochelle, it could be possible that was one of the glitches we had on the old application forms, but the ones we posted since October 4th have corrected that glitch. Do you know if that's if you've got one of the old forms?
I don't know, but where do I just go back out and pull up a new one?
Yeah, you can just pull up a new one on the website. It should solve it. Hopefully, if that's okay. Otherwise, you can either just send it in. We'll be fine.
Okay. And then the other question I had, and it's going to go back to the reasonable rent, but also when you when you fill in the validation tab, in terms of clarity with the PVV contract rent, is that the most you will get for the voucher?
Yeah, so you can't edit anything in the validation tab. That's just showing you some of our background calculations. The amount that you would get under project-based vouchers is the line under RAD contract rent. So we're bringing it up now on screen.
Sure.
The rent reasonable, we show all those calculations because they impact whether your RAD contract rent bumps up up against one of the rent caps, either rent reasonableness or 110% of the FMR. So the amount that you should be planning on is what's the line PVV contract rent.
Okay. All right. We just wanted to get clarity on that.
Okay. Hey, also, Michelle, go ahead and if you want to, can you send your application, just even whatever stage it's in right now, to our RAD resource, rad.gov, and and then we'll try to fix it this afternoon rather than you having to start a new one. Okay?
Hey, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Daryl Dalton. Daryl, go ahead.
Yes, we are a housing authority that has an existing capital fund financing program loan.
Okay.
And in our promissory note, there is a requirement there that if we repay that, it has to be repaid with capital funds.
Right.
And we were wondering, is there any assistance that HUD might provide with us to retire this debt? It's going to have to be addressed, before we can move forward.
Yep. So a couple of ways of sort of attacking this. So one is those terms are sometimes still subject to negotiation in the sense that you may have a lender that when you sit with them, they may be willing to open it up, or they may be willing to have a piece of provide the financing for your new deal. So it might be that they're willing to negotiate. If not, if they sort of are sticking to that particular provision, and again, in some cases, the loans documents do say that they can only be repaid with capital funds. Then one of the things that PHA can also do is if you had, let's say, you needed to pay it down by $500,000 to maintain the same debt service ratio, that you might have $500,000 in existing capital fund monies that you could use that you were planning to spend on something else, but this particular project may generate sufficient financing proceeds that you could sort of come back and replace the money you spent from the capital fund for the repayment and use the financing proceeds to backfill your capital fund program. So that's sort of another option. But we're definitely exploring various options. At the time of application, you don't have to solve that. And we pledge to work with you to find in cases where it is causing you a headache to see if we can find a way around it.
Thank you. We'll move forward.
Sure. Kathleen Foster, I'm just going to ask if she's still on the line, if she wanted to add anything to that, or if Kathleen, you wanted to reach out to this agency. Kathleen, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, and I'm happy to, take any questions. If you have them, you can reach me at 704-607-6024. And we've been trying to help people, think through their CFFP current situation and devise a strategy around it. But as Greg said, you should go ahead and file your application, and then that'll be one of the first things you'll look at with, assuming that you're successful in your application, that'd be one of the first things that the transaction manager would sit down with you about.
We'll make the same assumption.
Okay, thanks, Daryl. Joe Schiff, go ahead, Joe.
Hey, guys, it's Mike Austin, Macon Housing Authority, sitting in for Joe Schiff. How you doing today?
Hey, Mike. Good, thanks.
Good. Real quickly, if we decide to bring, say, 200 units over, and for whatever reason, after the CHAP or during the CHAP or even after a HAP signing, we decide that for whatever reason we want to bring one unit offline, maybe for a manager's unit, could that be done, and how would we do that?
So this is prior to execution of the, or prior to actual conversion? This is between, right. fine. You'd work it through with the transaction manager.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure in case we, change our mind and decide to take one. And of course, if it did get funded, of course we wouldn't, charge, we couldn't charge HUD for that unit on a monthly billing cycle and for vouchers, of course.
And just as a broader point for all, that certainly these are applications. Things are going to change, and so we certainly readily acknowledge that people may need to make adjustments and all that. And really, we want to get you guys to the goal line, and so we expect to be quite reasonable with all this.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sure. All right, so we're out of questions. I'll give about 30 more seconds to see if there's any other hands that show up. All right, so that's it. Again, thanks. We hope we've been helpful in this, and we look forward to seeing applications associated with these names next week. Okay. All right, Will, Kathleen, thanks everybody. Thank you.